Hold on, so two of the most important key terms for your new character are the unstable trait and the explode action. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, so please pardon me for a moment. I need to go add several new NPC lawyers to my setting that all specialize in property damage litigation, no particular reason. Today, we're going to talk about the Inventor class for Pathfinder 2e on today's episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello travelers and tourists, my name is Mark and I am the local disaster tour guide. That's right, I am a storyteller that appreciates the fact that Paizo finally released a class that leans into the idea of being so hyper-focused into a particular skill set that you are likely to forget to invest in any social skills whatsoever. It's like they understand the nerd experience. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder, and welcome back to Classic Introductions, where today we're going to take a look at the Inventor class for Pathfinder 2e, which can be found in the book Guns and Gears. This class focuses on the idea of building unique inventions and then bringing them into battle to give you an edge against your enemies. So whether you're trying to emulate the flying armor of Iron Man, or you just really like the idea of having your own personal guardian robot, the Inventor class offers an opportunity to explore this entertaining and popular playstyle. Now, in Classic Introductions, we take a look at different classes in TTRPGs and ask what they have to offer players at the gaming table. And in this series, we take a look at each class through the lens of 7 specific questions. Number 1, we ask, what is the class role of the Inventor? Number 2, how complex is the Inventor to play? Number 3, what are the key terms and concepts that you need to know to play an Inventor? Number 4, what are the Inventor's strengths? Number 5, what are the Inventor's weaknesses? Number 6, what are the subclass options that the Inventor offers? And finally, number 7, how can I get the most out of the Inventor in play? If you are interested in reading up on the Inventor, you can find it in Guns and Gears in the Gears section starting on page 14. Though for this particular class, I'm also going to be making a lot of references to weapon and armor traits inside of the game, and most of those can be found in the equipment section of the core rulebook, so that's another place you may need to go to read up on what some of the options for this class may have to offer. Now, of all these series that I do on this channel, Classic Introductions is the most complicated series for me to put together, so if you enjoy this content, it would mean a lot to me if you would do all of that YouTube stuff that helps support the channel. Leave a like, share the video, subscribe to the channel. You can check out my free Discord or my Patreon, both of those are linked in the video description. And of course, far and away, the number one thing you can do to support this channel, and what I truly appreciate the most, is you can join the conversation. Jump down to the comments section, leave your thoughts, ideas, and observations about the Inventor, because I always learn something from the observations that my community brings to these conversations. But with all that out of the way, let's get started. Okay, so up first, let's answer the question, what is the class role of the Inventor? Now in Pathfinder 2e, the Inventor would be described as an intelligence-based martial class. The key ability for the Inventor is going to be its intelligence, and as a result, most of its class abilities are going to be driven by its intelligence score. And then martial class is essentially a shorthand for a combat-oriented class. Whether it's getting up close and personal with a monster, or engaging in ranged combat, or even tanking and defending your allies, all of those fall under the umbrella of a martial class, and the Inventor can actually potentially play any of those 3 roles pretty effectively. However, to add a little more nuance here, Because the Inventor is a martial class that builds off of its intelligence, it's a martial class that blends over into the skill monkey concept, and in particular, this is a class that makes heavy use of the crafting skill, meaning that the play experience of the Inventor is really built around the idea. Yeah, that pun wasn't intentional, but I'm running with it anyways. It's really built around the idea of building and boosting unique equipment to give your character an advantage in battle. Up next we have the second question, which is, how complex is the Inventor? And allow me to say, after doing videos on the Oracle and the Summoner, I am so excited to talk about the Inventor today, because the Inventor is coming in with a complexity score of 6, maybe 7 out of 10. Thank you, Paizo, for making my job easier today. Now, when it comes to the complexity of building and playing an Inventor, there is going to be some variability based upon your subclass. We'll talk about those more in section 6 of this video. But some subclasses, such as the Armor Innovation, are mostly passive and relatively easy to play, while other subclass options, such as the Weapon Innovation, are very complex and really require a lot of planning and thinking. So you're going to get a little variability in terms of exactly how much homework the Inventor comes with, but overall this is a martial class, no weird spell casting to worry about. There's a few front-loaded abilities that you have to think about and get used to, but in general I find that the Inventor is fairly easy and fairly straightforward to play. To give you a comparison, the Ranger is also a martial class that has an optional companion that they can use in battle, and I gave them a 6 out of 10 overall in complexity, and I feel like the Inventor is very comparable to the Ranger. If you have any experience playing the Ranger in Pathfinder 2e, I feel like you will find the Inventor to be similarly approachable to the Ranger. Still, on the subject of complexity, I feel like I should throw out my usual disclaimer here, in that please never let the complexity of a class dissuade you from playing something that you are interested in. Through long experience, I have found that if someone is interested in a particular character concept, the homework that comes with that character concept is something that you're going to enjoy and be able to work through anyways. Excitement always overweighs complexity. So even if you are new to Pathfinder 2e, if the Inventor interests you, I feel like you could pick it up and pretty easily get used to playing the class. But let's move past the overall complexity and actually talk about some of the key terms and concepts that you need to be familiar with if you choose to play an Inventor. Now, one of the things I appreciate about Paizo is, for every class in the game, is they give us a handy sidebar that highlights some of the most important terms and concepts that are associated with a given class, and they do this for the Inventor as well. In particular, the sidebar is going to highlight 2 terms that are specific to the Inventor that are worth knowing, and then another 5 terms beyond that. Paizo, thank you! For once the sidebar is honest! Okay, so if you've seen more than a few episodes in this series, you probably know that I frequently complain about the fact that Paizo will highlight some of the important terms, but then leave other important ideas to be something you have to dig through the class to discover. But I actually feel like the sidebar for the Inventor does a really good job of helping you understand some of the things inside of the class and outside of the class that you need to engage with if you want to effectively play the class. The very first key term that it gives you is not actually Inventor specific. The first key term is the term Gadget. Now, gadgets are a type of item that was added to Guns and Gears, and these are essentially consumable items that are technological in nature. So you can think of gadgets as occupying a similar play space to something like a potion or a scroll. It's a one-use item that's going to have a particular effect, and then the item is gone. Gadgets are not specific to inventors. Any character can potentially use them. However, much like Rangers can specialize in snares in the core rulebook, the Inventor has the option to specialize into gadgets through some of its class feat selections, meaning that this particular type of item is something that is very common for Inventors to use, so the game just kind of highlights, hey, this is a type of item you want to pay attention to because a lot of your class choices will naturally interact with them. Now, I think Inventor and Gadget is kind of an obvious overlap, but I do appreciate the fact here that Paizo takes the time to point out, hey, this particular type of item is intended to work well with your class. Skipping down to the bottom of that sidebar, you actually find several unique weapon traits that certain inventors could potentially add to particular weapons that they might create. Now, in this specific case, they hone in on 4 specific traits that the inventor can add that are extremely rare inside of the game. And unless you're playing a weapon innovation inventor, you're probably not going to use those traits in specific. But what this section of the sidebar does is it kind of keys you into the idea that the traits on your equipment are important, especially to the inventor. Now, this is something I've said for many other classes. If you're playing a fighter, you want to know what the traits on your weapon means. But here, Paizo takes the time to highlight, hey, here's some traits, here's what they mean, here's what they do. And it just kind of clues you into, this is a portion of the game that you want to pay attention to, because a lot of the inventor class features are going to revolve around playing with and utilizing traits in interesting ways. So the gadget key term and the weapon traits may not be inventor specific, but Paizo still calls them out because they are naturally going to play into what the inventor does. However, there are a couple of terms that are inventor specific, so let's go ahead and talk about those. The first one is the term modification. And essentially a modification is something cool that you've done to your favorite invention. The subclasses of the inventor revolve around a particular innovation that you have created, either an armor innovation, a construct innovation, or a weapon innovation, and these innovations are particularly unique because of the modifications that you have made to them. Now, from a gameplay perspective, essentially what the term modification means is innovation-specific trait. If you see modification, you know that this is something that is going to be relevant to the innovation you have created for your character. That's what it tells you. However, there's an extra layer to this, and that is modifications are easy to retrain once you hit your 3rd level as an inventor. At level 3, you will gain an ability called Reconfigure that allow you to retrain modifications in a single day with a successful crafting check. Normal retraining times are much longer, so essentially what modification is telling you here is this is a class feature that you can swiftly change out based on the needs of your character. But now let's move on to the truly enjoyable key term for the inventor, and the one that I imagine many people have been waiting to hear about, and that is the unstable key term. Unstable is a key term used to describe particular actions that you can perform with your innovation. Maybe it's a special strike that you can make with your weapon, maybe it's a special action that your construct innovation can take, but essentially what you are doing is pushing the limits of what your innovation is capable of. When you perform an unstable activity, the effect of that activity goes off. The action is performed. However, once that activity is over, immediately afterwards, you roll a DC 17 flat check, and if you fail that flat check, you cannot perform any other unstable activities or actions until you've spent some time repairing your device. Additionally, if you critically fail that flat check, you end up taking some fire damage as your innovation backfires on you. Now, you will start the game with a single unstable action available at 1st level, and as you progress through the Inventor class, you may unlock other actions that have the unstable trait. However, it's also worth noting that some Inventor actions have what's known as an unstable function. And essentially what this means is that a given action has 2 modes. A normal, non-risky mode, and a let's push the limits and see what we can get away with mode. Essentially, if you use that more dangerous version of the action, it gains the unstable trait, and after the action is over, you have to make that flat check just like you would for any other unstable action. And speaking of unstable actions, let's go ahead and talk about Explode, which is an ability that you get at 1st level. This is a 2-action activity that requires you to be wearing or wielding your innovation and essentially allows you to cause your innovation to explode. The naming convention here is just so on point, that's what I'm saying. And essentially what this does is it creates a 5-foot AoE fire damage effect around you as your innovation just unleashes this powerful gout of flame. Now, if you have the construct innovation, it does change this ability up just a bit in that the AoE fire effect will surround your construct rather than you, but other than that, the statistics are the same. As you level up, the amount of fire damage that this ability deals, as well as the potential radius of the effect, will slowly increase. And once it is over, you have to make that flat check DC 17 to see whether or not you have overloaded your innovation. Go figure, standing in the middle of an explosion can deal damage to yourself. Who knew? There is one final Inventor special ability that I want to discuss before leaving this section of the video, and that is the Overdrive ability, which is a single action activity that you can perform during combat. You spend an action and you attempt a crafting check to try to overdrive your innovation. The crafting check is at a standard DC for your level, and if you succeed or critically succeed at that crafting check, you get to add either half of your intelligence modifier or your full intelligence modifier to the damage of your innovation for the next minute. Now, that phrase, standard DC for your level, means that typically this check is not going to be too hard. You're probably normally going to need to roll around a 9, 10, or 11 on the dice in order to succeed at this, so it's not a particularly difficult check, but a badly timed dice roll can potentially backfire here. And also be aware that the specifics of how the bonus damage work will vary a bit from weapon innovation to armor innovation to construct innovation. You'll want to read up on the specifics of the innovation that you're using, but in general, Overdrive is just this nice minute-long damage boost that you get to use during combat. But now let's move on to some of the more entertaining parts of the conversation and talk about what are the strengths of the Inventor class. First, I want to talk about a couple of strengths that are just generally applicable to the class as a whole, and then I'll talk about some of the strengths that are a little more innovation dependent. First up, one of the primary strengths of the Inventor class is it's kind of a skill monkey. It's not going to have quite as many skill options as a class like the Rogue or the Investigator, but as a high intelligence class, you are almost certainly going to begin the game with over half of the available class skills trained, and it's easy to push that percentage much higher as you level up. And on top of that, the Inventor class is going to automatically level up the crafting skill for you, which is your primary focus, and it's even going to give you the Inventor skill feat for free much earlier than any other class in the game can pick it up. The Inventor class may be a martial class in terms of its base package, but it comes with an incredible diversity of skills, and unlike other classes in Pathfinder 2e, your skills really aren't locked in. Some classes really push your skill suite in a certain direction, but for the Inventor, you really only have one critical skill, crafting, and that's going to progress for free, so you have a lot of skills and you can really do whatever you want with them. This allows a lot of build diversity and a lot of options. It allows for a lot of creativity in play, and kind of like the Rogue and the Investigator, the Inventor is one of those classes that is going to have a lot to offer outside of combat, as they are creative enough and flexible enough to solve a lot of problems. Another aspect of the Inventor's flexible class design that should be considered a notable strength is the Inventor comes with pretty impressive damage variety. Now, don't get me wrong, Inventors are good at dealing fire damage. They have a core class feature called Explode. Fire damage is obviously one of the things that they're good at, but the reality is, Inventors have access to a lot of different damage types, and that gives them really good versatility inside of the game. It's not hard for Inventors to pick up fire, electric, cold, acid damage, or other interesting options as they progress through play, and if you're playing a weapon innovation Inventor, that damage versatility is only going to get a lot more ridiculous, meaning if your enemy has a weakness at all, there is a real possibility you have a way of targeting that weakness directly. There are a lot of classes in Pathfinder 2e that like to approach the game from a flexible mindset, and in particular with the Inventor, I think damage type flexibility is one of the real strengths of the class that's easy to overlook. But now I want to talk a little more specifically about subclasses. I know we're not technically in the subclass section yet, but since we're talking about strengths, it is worth noting that the strengths of the Inventor will vary based on the subclass that you're playing. First up, the Armor Innovation is obviously the tanking-oriented subclass for the Inventor. Depending on the class options that you take, the Armor Innovation can offer you things like concealment or a variety of different types of damage reduction. Essentially, it is a very protective subclass, but one of the things that's easy to miss is the Armor Innovation will give you access to the armor specialization of the Armor Innovation you create. Now, all Armor Innovations are considered composite armors, which means that the armor specialization of those armors specifically gives you very impressive damage reduction against piercing attacks. What does that mean? Well, from a tactical perspective, ranged weapons are almost always dealing piercing damage, meaning that the Armor Innovation isn't just a tanking option, but it's a particularly effective anti-ranged combat tanking option. Ranged opponents are going to have a very hard time taking you down unless they're using very particular weapons. Up next, we have the Construct Innovation. Basically, you have a robot that you've built that helps you in battle, and this construct is considered a minion. It's going to play in a very similar fashion to animal companions for a class like a druid or a ranger. And I think that's the easiest comparison to make here. If you're using the Construct Innovation, you can essentially look at it through that lens of a mechanical animal companion, if you will. But what does it mean to be a construct rather than an actual animal companion? Well, this is where I think the niche of the Inventor really stands out, in that construct innovations are, on the whole, more durable than most animal companions. They start out with a base of 10 hit points, which is basically as high as a companion can go, and then they have a lot of construct immunities that are going to make them much harder to take down than a normal animal companion might be. But what about the weapon innovation? Now, over at the website RPGbot, the author that wrote the Inventor article said it best when it comes to the weapon innovation. There are, at present, about 300 different weapons inside of Pathfinder, and the weapon innovation exists specifically for those people who look at a list of 300 options and say, you know what? I was wanting something just a little bit different. We'll get into this more in the subclass section, but the weapon innovation is going to focus around the idea of adding more traits to your weapon, and if you think about the earlier discussion we had about damage flexibility being a key component of the Inventor class, well, the weapon innovation really shines in this department. They have some of the best flexibility and especially damage flexibility in the game. There is a special note worth mentioning here when it comes to the strengths of the weapon innovation. If you have access to uncommon weapons at level 1, you can really have some fun with this class feature. A lot of Ancestry-specific weapons often come with extra traits relative to the normal weapons in the game. So, if you're playing a character who's taken some of those Ancestry weapon feats, they pair really, really well with weapon innovation because it allows you to take what is already a very unique weapon and add even more options on top of that. But okay, let's flip the script a little bit and talk about the weaknesses of the Inventor class, not the least of which is your stuff explodes. Now theoretically, things exploding in your face shouldn't be happening to you too often, but just the fact that many of your class features come with this inherent risk of things backfiring and dealing fire damage to you on a critical failure, your innovations and inventions are never perfectly safe. And that does mean that the Inventor is a class that comes with a little extra risk built into the core of their action rotation inside of the game. And this risk is kind of unavoidable because you are playing an intelligence-based martial class. This is a weakness that we've seen a little bit in some of the other classes in the game when we've talked about the Alchemist and the Thaumaturge. When you have a martial class that is built around a key ability score other than strength or dexterity, what ends up happening is you have a martial class that is at least a little behind the curve when it comes to normal attack and damage inside of combat. A fighter or a barbarian that wades into melee, they have a very high strength, which makes them naturally skilled in that particular mode of combat. The Inventor, however, is pushing their intelligence instead, with strength and dexterity being a secondary consideration, meaning they aren't going to be quite as effective in that role. Now, they do have class abilities that can push how effective they are and allow them to keep pace with other classes, but those other class abilities have risk built into them, meaning that you never really get to escape that risk of these cool innovations that you're using blowing up in your face. Another weakness worth noting when it comes to the Inventor is, like many nerds, you are so caught up in your projects, you are not very aware of what's going on around you, and oftentimes that lack of awareness extends to your social situations. Let's talk about this. First off, the Inventor ties with the Champion for the worst perception progression in the game, meaning that in general, you're not going to be as aware of what's happening around you. And then, because of the unique attribute needs that the Inventor has built into the class, intelligence is a priority, but then strength, dexterity, and constitution are also probably major considerations because you are playing a martial character. That means that wisdom and charisma are often going to be kind of left behind compared to your other attributes, meaning that this is the first class in a long time that is not going to be the party face. Now, don't get me wrong, the Inventor does have enough skill picks that you can probably invest in some social skills and be reasonable with them, but the Inventor is going to struggle to push social skills the way that other classes in the game could, and you kind of walk away from the Inventor with this perception of a class that is so deeply embedded in its work that it's just not as aware of what's happening around them as they probably should be. And honestly, as a nerd, I completely appreciate this. I know what that feels like. But now that we've talked about some of the general weaknesses of the Inventor class, let me mention a couple of weaknesses that are worth noting for these specific innovations. Up first, we have the armor innovation, which has the strength of being very defensive, and as a result, ends up being weaker in the offensive category. Now, the armor innovation can pour some damage into your unarmed strikes, or maybe into a particular weapon that you choose each day. The armor innovation is still going to allow for some offense, but that offense is so secondary to the defensive choices of the subclass that it's going to be noticeable. Also, the discussion around the armor innovation makes a lot of reference to special unarmed strikes, and in general, unarmed strikes are just a little bit harder to push if you don't have some good ancestry feats, or if you aren't willing to use a multi-class dedication to really bring those up to par. As for the construct innovation, I've noted that they are very comparable to animal companions, and that they are built to be a little more durable than the typical animal companion would be. The downside here is, unlike most animal companions, construct innovations aren't going to automatically unlock special abilities. So, for example, if I have a bird animal companion, I can get flyby attack as part of my normal progression. The construct innovation doesn't have that. When they get their upgrades, it's mostly just going to be stat upgrades. Now, don't get me wrong, the Inventor does have class feats that can add special abilities to the construct innovation, but those special abilities are coming in the form of a feat tax, so the construct innovation, while it is typically more durable than most animal companions, it's not going to have the array of baseline abilities that a normal animal companion would. What about the weapon innovation? Are there any weaknesses we need to be aware of here? Well, this one's a little tricky, but it's kind of the flip side of all of the flexibility I mentioned earlier. The weapon innovation is all about playing around with the traits of your weapon, but traits don't necessarily stack. Traits are really good for helping your weapon be viable in a lot of different situations, but oftentimes you're going to have a few traits over here that are good in this situation and a few traits over here that are good in that situation, and they're not necessarily going to overlap. And there are even certain instances where traits are specifically mentioned as not stacking. So, no matter how much work you do on your weapon innovation, you're never going to get to increase the damage dice of your weapon innovation 2 times. You can do it once, but that's as far as you're going to go. Just be aware that the flexible nature of traits means that not every trait is going to be useful every single time. It's more about helping your weapon become adaptable to a variety of circumstances. But since we've spent so much time mentioning the different innovations already, the time has come to actually dive into the 3 different innovations that are offered for the Inventor and talk about the subclass or build options the Inventor gives us. As noted, the Inventor is going to come with 3 specific subclasses: the Armor Innovation, the Construct Innovation, or the Weapon Innovation. At level 1, you'll get to pick one of these 3 options, and then you will get to add an initial modification to the particular option that you chose, which is going to come from a pretty long and impressive list. The Armor Innovation specifically is going to give you 2 different options to choose from: a Power Suit or a Subterfuge Suit. Now, the Power Suit starts off as medium armor and can eventually upgrade to heavy armor if you so choose, while the Subterfuge Suit is and remains light armor throughout the course of the game. As you level up, the Subterfuge Suit will give you access to some special upgrades that can potentially give you things like concealment or maybe allow you to hide without concealment or cover, and is intended for a more mobile playstyle, while the Power Suit, both the medium and heavy versions, are obviously intended for a tankier playstyle. The Construct Innovation, as I've mentioned, can essentially be viewed as a mechanical animal companion of some kind, and they give you very specific stats on how to build your Construct Innovation. Your Construct Innovation is considered a minion, so it's going to follow the normal rules for how minions work. Essentially, as an Inventor, you can spend a single action to command your minion and give them 2 actions. However, the Inventor does come with a special advantage when it comes to their minion, in that they can actually spend 2 actions to give their Construct Companion 3 actions. Now, Rangers and Druids can potentially do that, but they normally have to spend a class feat to gain that ability, so the Inventor does come with a little extra flexibility in how they can command their Construct Companion. Finally, you have the Weapon Innovation, and for the Weapon Innovation, essentially you begin the game with a single common level 0 weapon, and you get to choose from a long list of special abilities that essentially add traits to your weapon. Now, it is worth noting here that you can step outside of those level 0 weapons. For example, if you want a common level 1 weapon, you can use that with your Inventor. You just have to pay the cost for it during character creation. Another possible option here is you might be able to use an uncommon level 0 or level 1 weapon that you have access to through something like an Ancestry feat. But essentially, at first level, you're going to pick a weapon that you have access to, and then start modifying what you can do with it. Now, when I say that the Weapon Innovation is going to allow you to add traits to your weapon, I think it is worth emphasizing traits, plural. Pretty much every option for the Weapon Innovation is going to give you 2 traits, or at the very least, 1 trait and 1 special ability of some kind. So these are pretty powerful and flexible upgrades, and the modifications for your weapon, there is a special note in the rules that's easy to miss. A lot of the weapon modifications come with versatile as one of the traits that they offer. So you might get versatile piercing, versatile slashing, versatile bludgeoning, something like that. The versatile trait allows a weapon to deal a different type of damage. So if a weapon is normally bludgeoning and it gets versatile slashing, then it could deal bludgeoning or slashing damage. Now, as versatile is fairly common, especially with the initial modifications, and there's really only 3 types of damage that versatile offers, this is where inventors get a special note. If your weapon modification would give you a versatile damage that the weapon already has, you can pick an alternate versatile damage. So let's say that your base weapon deals bludgeoning damage and the modification you want gives you versatile bludgeoning. Well, you can, no cost, switch out that versatile bludgeoning for versatile piercing or versatile slashing instead. I like the fact that Paizo includes that flexibility on the weapon modifications, because otherwise a lot of weapons would be ruling out certain abilities and the class just wouldn't be as flexible. So those are your options at first level. You can pick an armor innovation, a construct innovation, or a weapon innovation, and then you get to pick an initial modification for whichever innovation is important to you. As you level up, these innovations will get stronger. At 7th level, you'll get to pick a breakthrough innovation. At 9th level, you'll be able to give your innovation an offensive boost, which is essentially just adding a certain damage type to your innovation. And then at 15th level, you'll get to add a final revolutionary modification as well. So as you level up, you will continue to play around with this neat innovation that you have developed. Now, before I leave the subclass section, there is one thing on Inventor builds that I would like to note, and that is the Gadget Specialist Feat line, which initially becomes available as a choice for Inventors at level 4. As we mentioned earlier, gadgets are technological consumables that Inventors are known to commonly use. And there's a line of feats that Inventors can access that essentially give them free gadgets every single day. It's very reminiscent of the snare feats that Rangers get, and if you're familiar with that line of options, that's kind of what you can expect here, but with gadgets instead. I want to point out the Gadget Specialist line of options for Inventors because this is a line of feats that is not particular to any innovation. Armor, construct, and weapon innovation Inventors can all take advantage of the Gadget Specialist line of feats. They don't interfere with your innovation in any way, and that's another way to add some flexibility to your build that I think is worth considering. So while Gadget Specialist isn't an explicit subclass option for the Inventor, it is a line of feats that is worth paying attention to. But alright, let's consider our last question for the day. How can I get the most out of the Inventor in play? Well, the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that you are a martial class that kind of leans into that skill monkey category. You're going to get legendary crafting automatically as you level up, and you also have access to the Inventor skill feat for free far earlier than anybody else on your team can potentially get it. What I'm saying here is, as an Inventor, make good use of the crafting skill. First up, there are several skill feats where, for a single skill feat, you can add a pretty impressive array of items to the suite of things you're capable of creating. Snares is an easy example here, but alchemical crafting also works perfectly well for you. Sure, you need some prep time to get those things running, but you have the skill to do so. Also, as an Inventor, you're probably going to be the most talented person at performing repairs in your party, and that can go a long way to keeping your team effective from encounter to encounter to encounter. You have the intelligence, you have the training, and Pathfinder technically has crafting rules. But in all seriousness, this is an aspect of your character to lean into, to look into, and figure out how you can turn to the advantage of your team. Another aspect of getting the most out of the Inventor, and this is probably the part of the series where I sound a little bit like a broken record, that is retraining. I've mentioned it before, I'll mention it again. Retraining is a core element of Pathfinder 2e. It's part of the core rules. It is something that is intended to be used, but the Inventor class specifically points out that the modification term allows you to retrain very quickly. That is a significant boon to this class, and that is something you should not overlook. A single day's worth of downtime can radically alter what you are capable of bringing to your team, and as a result, a little planning goes a very long way. The last thing that I want to say about getting the most out of the Inventor, though, is we need to talk about survivability. The Inventor is a martial class, but the fact that I feel I should note here is, much like the Rogue, your base hit points are 8 plus Constitution modifier per level, and because you lean so heavily into intelligence, there's a good likelihood that your Constitution is going to be a little bit behind where most other martial classes might be. What this means is, as a martial character, you are a little more fragile than other martial classes might be, especially in a straight-up fight. What I'm saying is, as an inventor, they gave you shield block for a reason. You want to look for things that will increase your survivability, and you want to look for options that are going to help you defensively inside of a fight. The Inventor is a martial class that is, at least relative to other martial classes, fairly easy to overwhelm if you are not careful. Now obviously the armor innovation is a little bit of an outlier here, with the various damage resistances and defensive options that the armor innovation offers. That particular subclass is going to be reasonably effective in a tanking role, but still, even in those instances, you want to be careful and you want to make sure you're watching your health and watching your defenses to make sure that you don't get overwhelmed. Also, on the subject of survivability, I know this feels like an obvious point, but your stuff has a habit of exploding. If you can get fire resistance, that is a very good thing. But with that, we have a pretty effective overview of what the Inventor is and what it has to offer. So the time has come for me to turn the conversation over to you. What are your thoughts about the Inventor class, and do you agree with my analysis? Are there strengths that I overlooked or weaknesses that I failed to mention? And do you have any advice for someone who's looking at playing the Inventor? Jump down to the comments section and leave your ideas there. Don't forget all of the other YouTube stuff. Like, share, and subscribe. You can check out my free Discord and my Patreon. Both of those links will be in the video description. But as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.